on me under Standing Order 77. I leave the matter in the hands of the House for any action it may deem appropriate.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of your ruling, I beg under Standing Order 17.3 to take the time of the House for urgent business.
The question is that the Honourable Prime Minister be allowed under Standing Order 17.3 to take the time of the House for urgent business. Those in favour say aye, those against say no.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, having obtained your permission, I beg to move under Standing Order 29.1 to present a motion without notice.
Seconded.
The question is that the Honourable Prime Minister be allowed under Standing Order 29.1 to move a motion without notice. Those in favour say aye, those against say no.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of your ruling and in terms of the provisions of Standing Order 49.8, I beg to move that Dr. the Honourable Boulel be suspended from the service of the Assembly for today's sitting and the next two sittings unless unreserved apologies are tendered to the House.
Seconded.
The question, order. The question is that Dr. the Honourable...
Mr. Speaker, sir, on a point of order, I heard Honourable Béranger uttering the word Soussea.
I'll come to this later.
Yes, and he has confirmed.
The question is that the Dr. Honourable Boulel be suspended from service of the Assembly for today's sitting. And I didn't hear how many days? Two sittings.
Two sittings.
Unless unreserved apologies are tendered to the House. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. Honourable Boulel, you have apologies? So, I'll come to this point of you just read, Honourable Prime Minister. Honourable Béranger, would you present apologies?
Certainly not.
Yes. And therefore, Honourable Béranger, you don't mind leave the House? You don't mind leave the House? Leave the House.
At least you can say that.
Leave the House. Order. No more remarks or comments. If not, I am naming you. I am naming you. I am naming you.
Papers have been laid. Questions?
Still in a state of shock, Mr. Speaker, but I will ask my question. It's to ask the Honourable Attorney General, Minister of Agro-Industry and Food Security, whether in regard to the land d'Avaux and Mangin of an extent of 251 hectares, he will state A, the date on which Eco Deer Park Association applied for a lease on the property, B, the date of signature of the lease, C, if in September 2020 he attended an event on the site, and if so indicate, 1, at whose invitation, 2, for what purpose, and 3, the names of other persons present.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank the Honourable Leader of Opposition for his private notice question, which gives me an opportunity to provide information and clarifications on this matter to the House, particularly related to the chassé on state land. In respect of forest land, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to inform the House that there are around 20,000 hectares of forest state land which fall under the purview of my ministry, while there are approximately 25,000 hectares of forest land belonging to the private sector. Out of the 22,000 hectares of forest state land, there are 10,000 hectares, approximately, suitable for lease for shooting and fishing purposes. Lease of state forest land dates back to the colonial period, where forest lands were leased for hunting and shooting purposes. With the coming into force of the Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966, a legal framework was established to enable the lease of state forest land for rearing and hunting, for deer, fowls, and the undertaking of ecotourism activities, such as nature-based and related activities. The Shooting and Fishing Leases Act gives the lessee the right, under various conditions, to shoot and go in pursuit of game, fish, hunt, and subject to the payment of such fees as may be prescribed to carry out ecotourism activities. The forest policy of my ministry was adopted in 2006 with regard to deer rearing on state forest lands, which aims at contributing to the enhancement of the environment through increasing forest and tree cover, ensuring sustainable management of state-owned forest land leased for deer rearing, and encouraging sustainable management of private forests opened up for deer rearing, taking into consideration legislation on property rights and environmentally sensitive areas. At present, out of the approximately 22,000 hectares of state forest land, about 10,700 hectares of state forest land around the island are suitable for shooting and fishing. Most of them are found in the district of Plaine-Williams. The remaining ones are conservation and protected areas around the island, for example, near mountain slopes.
My question is specific to do with this land, Davos and Mangin. What is it taking me around the island for?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am coming to it.
You may continue, Honorable Minister.
I was saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am coming to it. I reassure the House. I was saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, the remaining ones are conservation and protected areas scattered around the island, for instance, near mountain slopes, nature reserves, and environmentally sensitive regions under the Forest Reserves Act. Currently, there are about 39 running leases covering an area of approximately 6,300 hectares. 26 leases are in the process of being renewed, covering an area of about 2,700 hectares. And concerning the region of Grand Bassin, 4 leases totaling approximately 1,000 hectares around Grand Bassin have been cancelled. The Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966 provides for 3 methods of granting lease, which are 1, to be put up by public auction, 2, by way of tenders, and 3, on such terms and conditions as the minister may determine. Since the coming into force of the said Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966, the Ministry of Agriculture has had recourse only to the third option, that is, the grant of lease on such terms and conditions as the minister may determine. In line with the said act, the duration of shooting and fishing leases does not exceed 14 years. Initially, the lease agreement is for a period of 7 years and renewed for another period of 7 years. After the expiry of 14 years, fresh lease agreements are drawn for lessees. Conditions attached to the lease are as set out in the schedule to the Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966. Mr. Speaker, sir, processing of applications are handled at the level of the Forestry Service of my ministry. Monitoring also of forest state land falls under the responsibility of the Forestry Service of my ministry. Coming to part A of the question, Eco Deer Park Association, represented by one Mr. A.T. of the said association, submitted an application for lease to my ministry by way of letter dated 5th November 2020 for lease of state land for shooting and fishing / ecotourism activities under the Shooting and Fishing Leases Act. The application was processed by the Forestry Service of the Ministry as is the case according to the policy applicable. Following recommendation of the Conservator of Forests for the grant of the lease to Eco Deer Park Association and in line with Section 3 of the Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966, approval was given on 27 July 2021 for the grant of the lease under the stipulated conditions set out in the schedule to the Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966 over an extent of 273.17 hectares at place called Dayo, Grand Bassin, to Eco Deer Park Association for a period of 7 years for the promotion of deer rearing and hunting. The Conservator of Forests was accordingly informed on 30th July 2021, and the latter was requested to submit a copy of the lease agreement for record purposes once the lease agreement was signed. With regard to part B of the question, I am informed that the lease agreement was drawn on 17th February 2022 between Government of Mauritius and Eco Deer Park Association. The lease was registered with the Registrar General Department on 25th February 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, based on information received regarding activities contrary to the lease agreement being carried out on state forest land leased to Eco Deer Park Association at Dayo, region of Grand Bassin, by one Mr. J.H.C., a prompt investigation was undertaken by the Forestry Service on the alleged activities being undertaken at that site. The latter confirmed that the activities undertaken thereat were indeed outside the ambit of the lease agreement, which constituted a breach of the agreement. Hence, on 7th of March 2023, a notice of cancellation of the lease was served on the representative of the Eco Deer Park Association by a registered usher for the lessee to vacate the land within 48 hours. My ministry resumed possession of the state land as from Thursday, 9th March 2023, and seals have been affixed at the entrance of the site. The assistance of the police has been sought by the Forestry Service for the removal of concealed traps, following which a survey of the land will be undertaken. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Conservator of Forest that the Independent Commission Against Corruption has initiated an inquiry and has, on 7th of March 2023, secured the files related to the subject matter. The Forestry Service of my ministry is collaborating with the ICAC in this inquiry. Furthermore, ICAC has written to the ministry on 17th March 2023 to inform that they are investigating into an allegation of corruption / money laundering in relation to the lease of state land at Dayo to RKS Deer Ranch Limited and the Eco Deer Park Association. My ministry is providing all the information required by the ICAC. Mr. Speaker, sir, coming to part C of the question, this is the subject of series of allegations made by one or more alleged suspects or witnesses who have given statements in the course of the inquiry being conducted by ICAC. The said inquiry is ongoing, and it is public knowledge that the said alleged suspects and/or witnesses and/or third parties have not yet completed their statements. Since the ICAC is investigating in this matter, it will not be appropriate for me to make statement in the matter in order not to undermine the ongoing investigation. For now.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, I will come directly to the point. The lease that was signed by your representative, the person you designated, upon your decision to give this lease to Ecodia Association, the person who signed the lease was one, and you will well know this, one Vicky Giovanni Juliet. This Vicky Giovanni Juliet
No, don't
is
mention
okay,
names.
okay, I'm sorry.
Apologize for that. Apologize.
Okay, I will not anymore. This person is a convicted drug trafficker, having served 2 years in prison for trafficking heroin. And apart from that, he has other cases. Now, this is the person who you personally decided to give 600 arpents of land in 2022, and this same person went on to have a business, Société Centrale de Rivière-Noire, I think it is, La Golette, with one famous Mr. F. What have you got to say about this?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I humbly beg to differ. I refer to the reply I gave to the main question. I stated that following the application, which was by way of letter dated 5th November 2020, the application was processed by the Forestry Service of my ministry. That application was signed on behalf of the association by one Mr. A.T. And approval was given, as I stated in the main reply, on 27 July 2021. At the material time, there was no Mr. VGJ, and whatever has been put by way of question by the Honorable Leader of Opposition does not find its application with regard to the approval of the ministry. Now, having said so, whatever the Leader of the Opposition is saying, that he was a convicted drug trafficker, how come he was a party to the lease agreement? This is precisely the subject matter of the investigation. Moi, I have an idea what has happened, but I cannot say it now, having regard to the ongoing investigation, and especially, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to reiterate on what I have said earlier. There are alleged suspects, there are witnesses whose statements have not been completed, and it is public knowledge. We are reading about it in the press. I am also reading about it. So it will not be in order for me to give any specific information with regard to the signature of the lease, whether by Mr. VGJ or any other person.
This Mr. Juliet J, a partner of Mr. F. This same Mr. F, the file of which sat in his office for 3 years in respect of a rogatory commission. What a coincidence, Mr. Speaker, for the population of Mauritius to swallow that he decided to give a lease signed by a partner, a notorious drug trafficker, 700 acres, arpents, even to facilitate his drug trade in these 700 arpents. And this same person is associated with another person whose file remained dormant at his ministry as Attorney General for 3 years. Don't rely, don't hide behind
Put your
ICAC.
question.
Tell us like a
You're
man.
making a
Answer.
statement.
I don't know whether the lady members of the House will appreciate your comment as answering like a man. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to Mr. F and the file which the Leader of Opposition says has been sitting in the drawer, has been sleeping in the office, in my office, I would refer the Honorable Leader of Opposition and the House to the answer given by the Honorable Prime Minister 2 weeks back in answer to the private notice question, where the chronology has been clearly set out. It is not correct, it is wrong to say that the file has slept. The file was acted upon diligently. Application for judge's order was made, the judge's order was obtained. The hearing before the Master and Registrar did take place, if the Honorable Leader of Opposition is referring to the application for extradition, that was not made way back in 2019, as is being alleged in certain quarters. That came only in February of this year, and I won't say more because the application is pending before the District Court of Port Louis for both Mr. F and Mr. D. Coming to Mr. J. Mr. J, referred to by the Leader of Opposition, who is, I quote, quoting the Leader of Opposition, notorious drug trafficker. I don't have the necessary documentation in front of me. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, if the Leader of Opposition is trying to say that I have personally approved the list for Mr. J, I emphatically deny that.
Mr. Speaker, I thought we were dealing with well-informed men persons in this assembly. Apparently, the in general, Minister of Justice in charge of the DPP and the SLO is not aware of notorious drug traffickers. This is very dangerous.
No, Mr.
I'm going
Speaker,
to ask
sir,
the Honourable...
I don't keep crime
I'm
records.
going to ask the Honourable Minister. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister. Excuse me. Ask the Honourable Minister this question. How many other notorious drug dealers have obtained or are obtaining at this present time, as is renewing, land for their dirty business from him, since he doesn't seem to be aware of who the people are that are actually occupying the land that he is giving?
This is serious allegation being made that lease are being given to drug dealers, Mr. Speaker, sir. I reiterate, the application was made on behalf of the association in November 2020, signed by one Mr. A.T. There was no application on behalf of Mr. J or any other person. If the Honourable Leader of Opposition has any information about drug dealers, etc., he may communicate. And I wish to add one thing. Earlier, the Honourable Leader of Opposition suggested that I ought to be knowing of the previous convictions of any person in this country. I do not have the record of crime record office at my level, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is unfair to say that, as Minister, I have access to the crime records of citizens of this country.
When someone comes to ask for your hand of your daughter in marriage, 6 months before you say yes, on the date of the wedding, somebody else turns up and you still say yes. This is what happened for this list, Mr. Speaker. The fact is that it is a convicted drug trafficker in heroin whose task, whose work has been facilitated by your action and your ministry's action, and you need to take responsibility for that.
I welcome the fact that there is an inquiry in this matter, Mr. Speaker, sir. Should this matter be proven, it is indeed then in that case a serious matter which ought to be investigated. As I said earlier, I have an indication what happened. I don't want to say it here and now, having regard to the investigation which is ongoing, where witnesses and third parties are still recording their statements at ICAC. That inquiry will proceed. The ministry will collaborate fully, as I have said earlier, and as the officers of the ministry have confirmed. The Forestry Service will also collaborate. As I said earlier, ICAC has already taken in their possession the relevant files. I am informed that 2, in fact, files have been taken from the Forestry Service. There will be full collaboration in this matter with ICAC and any other investigatory body.
In this House, unless I am mistaken, again, there's a sacrosanct principle of ministerial responsibility in front of this House. ICAC doesn't come into it. You, Minister, are responsible to this House and through this House to the nation for something that you have done and has been done under your guidance and under your responsibility, and you cannot get away from answering questions.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you mentioned something you have done under your guidance or whatever, and the Minister just told you that an inquiry is being carried out. You said something you have done, unless you can prove it. What are you going to prove?
Just sit down, I will show you.
No, don't give me orders. I'm asking you what.
Section 3 of the Shooting and Leases Act, he said it himself. It's his personal responsibility to give the lease.
Yeah, but you said something which you have done.
Of course he has done. It's been given under his thing. What's wrong with you?
Unless the Minister has something to say on this. But
I'm asking the question.
I won't allow this question.
Now, so you need to answer to this House concerning your ministerial responsibilities. It cannot be a fashion that this House now becomes some sort of stupid house where everything that is being investigated in other instances, you are a minister no longer responsible to this House. Mr. Speaker, I will ask this question. Now, there was
There's a point of order.
the first.
Let
Speaker,
me
sir.
listen to the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, on a point.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, on a point of order, could the Honourable Leader of the Opposition have a bit of respect for this House and remove the word "stupid House"? And another point of order, Mr. Speaker, he has been imputing motives on the Attorney General for several times. He can't impute motives. It's in the standing order. If he don't know his standing order, I can give him a copy. He can learn from it.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, your advice. Please.
In my life.
Please,
I will come to that at some other time.
These are personal
Mr.
comments.
Speaker, Ken Malilve.
The House. Order, Mr. Lobin. Mr. Lobin, order. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, order. Personal things, personal.
Get him to join.
Order. Don't. Please, order. Personal things, services, all this. These are housekeeping materials. Don't bring this in this August Assembly. Put your question.
I am trying to put my question. The first lease of RKS was cancelled or tried to be cancelled because of drug planting. But when we look at the composition of the second lessee, the Eco DFR, we find in fact it is the same family. It is nephews of Mr. E, nieces of Mr. E, sisters and all that, of the same people who had the first lease. Now, isn't that a strange coincidence, Minister, that your predecessor cancelled the lease, rightly so, for planting of Gandia, a group of people, and the same group of people put their sisters, their nieces, their nephews, and you give the lease, but add, of course, this famous drug trafficker to the source, Mr. J. This is what's happened. So what have you got to say on that?
I have two things to say, Mr. Speaker. I have to reiterate what I said earlier, number one, and then I will come to Mr. E, nephew and nieces. I reiterate, Mr. Speaker, sir. Eco Deer Park Association submitted an application for lease to my ministry by way of letter dated 5th November 2020, signed by Mr. A.T. After processing of the application by the Forestry Service, in line with Section 3 of the Shooting and Fishing Leases Act 1966, approval was given on 27 July 2021. Time is of the essence, Mr. Speaker. Sir, coming to the nephew and nieces of Mr. E. Who would know who is a nephew or niece in this country, Mr. Speaker? Sir, having said so, I hasten to add, earlier we heard that in fact it was Mr. J who was the lessee. Now we hear it is the nephew and niece of Mr. E. I do not know how the nephew and niece of Mr. E is related to Mr. J. Having said so, I hasten to add one more thing. if the leader of the opposition is well aware of the case of Mr. E, then I would, about especially an ADSU case of cultivation of cannabis on the state land, and that is why the lease was cancelled, then I would refer the Honorable Leader of the Opposition to the granting and the approval of that previous lease to RKS Ranch Limited. That file has also been secured by the ICAC. And you know what, Mr. Speaker, sir? Who and when approved and granted the lease to RKS Ranch Limited in August 2007 and signed in 2008. And the famous Mr. E then clearly was the lessee. Not only one Mr. E, but other Mr. E, brothers. And when we had the cultivation of cannabis, so therefore, that lease was given to RKS Ranch Limited, where we had cases of cultivation and drug dealing. And the latest, let me say this again, the latest case of drug dealing is last year, August 2022. We are referring to these people.
The lease was renewed in 2015 by Honorable Siratan. So, I assume you don't get on together, you two. Now, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that's a stupid answer. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister.
I am so sorry. I have to sorry to interrupt.
I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister.
The Honorable Leader of Opposition. I never treat you with the word of stupid. I would no. If you treat my answer stupid, you're treating. So let us.
Fight about it. I remove it. No problem.
Now
let's talk about this famous case. This famous case of the Stag Party, which you seem to be embarrassed, although you said you welcome this PNQ, you seem to be embarrassed to answer that. Now let's talk about this 12th or September or thereabouts, the Stag Party. Is it a coincidence that following that Stag Party and following alleged payments made through some of your associates to you, that in November 2020, so we're talking about September, it takes a bit of time to create an association, so the application must have been made immediately after your famous Stag Party. In November 2020, the association is formed. On the 5th of November 2020, an application is made. Not only that, but RKS, related to this new ECHO, withdraws its case in June 2021 to allow you to award the land in July 2021. Do you see the timeline, Honorable Minister? You see the timeline from your famous Stag Party to the grant of the lease?
You've already put your question.
Yes, I'm repeating because you're not answering, obviously.
No, I'm waiting for you to finish. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is precisely why I said earlier. These form part of a series of allegations where speculations surround the allegations made by parties who are giving statements before ICAC concerning the lease, concerning the lease and concerning...
Let the Minister reply. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Leader of the Opposition, the Minister is replying. Let him reply.
Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Order. Time is over. Honorable Amans, order. Honorable Amans, If you want to stay in the House, behave yourself. Honorable Anne-Marie Navarre. Honorable Member of Parliament. Honorable Member of Parliament, please behave yourself. You are in Parliament. You are in Parliament, behave yourself. No comment after my ruling. No comment after my ruling. Forget about your name. MP. MP. Honorable MP. Clerk, move on.
B109.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of political financing has been the subject of debate over several years, and unfortunately, no proposal has so far met unanimity across the political spectrum. However, the first concrete attempt in our political history to introduce a political financing bill into the National Assembly to regulate the financing of political parties was made in 2019. In fact, the genesis of this bill can be traced back to December 2015, when government, under the Prime Ministership of late Sir Niru Jagannath, had set up a ministerial committee to make recommendations on several important aspects of our electoral system. The terms of reference of the ministerial committee were, amongst others, to make proposals on electoral reform with a view to introducing a dose of proportional representation in the National Assembly and proposing a draft financing of political parties bill. The recommendations of the ministerial committee, chaired at that time by Minister Mentor, were approved by government on 30th November 2018. Following a consultation exercise on 2nd July 2019, I myself, as Prime Minister, introduced the Constitution Amendment Bill and the Political Financing Bill in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, sir, the object of the Political Financing Bill was to provide for accountability and transparency with regard to the financing of, inter alia, political parties at a general election with a view to preventing undue influence and corruption. In addition to conferring powers to the Electoral Supervisory Commission and the Electoral Commission to investigate into the financial affairs of registered political parties for the better regulation of political financing. The bill provided for, inter alia, the legal framework for political financing and donations, instances where acceptance of donation would be prohibited, ceiling on expenditure, limitations on donation in kind, and obligations to keep accounting records, as well as sanctions and offenses for non-compliance with provisions of that proposed legislation. Given that the political financing bill proposed, in addition to the widening of the functions and powers of the Electoral Supervisory Commission and the Electoral Commissioner, relevant amendments to Section 41 of the Constitution were required. Accordingly, the Constitution Amendment Bill, which aimed at providing additional powers and functions to the ESC and the Electoral Commissioner, was introduced at the same time as the political financing bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also apposite to note that under Clause 12 of the political financing bill, donations from foreign governments, foreign entities, and non-citizens to political parties would not have been allowed and would have been treated as prohibited donations. In fact, according to the database of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, out of 180 countries, 126 have placed some form of ban on donations from foreign governments or foreign individuals. And such countries include the United Kingdom, Singapore, South Africa, Switzerland, the United States, Japan, Norway, Canada, Brazil, and France, amongst others. The main argument behind is to limit the threat of foreign interests undermining a country's democracy. Mr. Speaker, sir, in addition, the political financing bill provided that no person shall make a donation to an individual member of a registered political party other than to the treasurer of that party. Obligations for political parties to keep a register of donations as well as accounting records showing inter alia entries of all donations received and the requirement to submit an audited statement of account to the ESC were also provided therein. Mr. Speaker, sir, regrettably, both bills could not secure a three-quarter majority as required by Section 47(2)(b) of the Constitution, as the opposition parties voted against the enactment of the bills. The rejection of the political financing bill demonstrated the lack of will of the opposition parties to promote a culture of transparency and integrity in the political arena. In fact, after the rejection of the Constitution Amendment Bill 2018, this turned out to be the second time that the opposition boycotted prominent attempts at electoral reform. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to point out that although the opposition parties had commissioned a few reports on electoral reform when they were in government, they never walked the talk. Moreover, none of their reports addressed the issue of political financing. Let me cite a few examples. Neither the Carcassonne report, which was released in 2011, nor the Sitanen report, published in January 2012, dealt with the issue of political financing. Similarly, the consultation paper on electoral reform, which was presented by the then Prime Minister in March 2014, overlooked that issue. Reports that examine political financing are the Sachs Commission report of 2002 and the Select Committee set up in 2002 under the chair of Mr. Emmanuel Jiangxing on funding of political parties. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to Part A of the question, I wish to highlight that since November 2019, I'm heading a new government with new political partners, and we will be holding consultations on the electoral reform which the government would wish to bring about including political financing. Once the government comes up with a proposal and formula for the financing of political parties, consultations would be held with the Electoral Supervisory Commission, the Electoral Commissioner, and other relevant stakeholders, and the bill would be introduced in the National Assembly in due course. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regards Part B of the question, I wish to highlight that to date, there is no provision in our electoral legislation which prohibits receiving donations from foreign sources. Rather, we have limits on electoral expenses under Part 4, Sections 49 to 57 of the Representation of the People Act in regard to election expenses incurred by candidates at an election. Mr. Speaker, sir, however, with regard to acceptance of cash donations, whether from local or foreign sources, any person who makes or accepts any payment in cash in excess of 500,000 rupees or an equivalent amount in foreign currency, or such amount as may be prescribed, shall commit an offense under the Financial Intelligence and Anti-Money Laundering Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, furthermore, it would constitute an offense under the Customs Act and the Customs Regulations 1989 if a person, whether incoming, outgoing, or in transit, makes a physical cross-border transportation of, amongst others, currency of an amount of more than 500,000 Mauritian rupees or its equivalent in foreign currency without making a declaration to customs, so as to be in conformity with the customs legislation. Such person should submit the relevant declaration form to the customs or make an online declaration through the MRA website.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honorable Prime Minister mentioned about the December 2015, where there was the setting up of a ministerial committee on the electoral reform. Can the Honorable Prime Minister inform the House whether the said committee submitted any report on the issue of financial of political parties? And if yes, whether the contents of the said report were taken on board in the preparation of the political financing bill, which was introduced into the House in 2019. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can recall that, in fact, initially, the committee was set up under the chair of Honorable Xavier Duval when he was in government. I don't know whether I have the information. So it was set up in December 2015, and it had in fact submitted a report on the financing of political parties in April 2016, and the report, however, was very scanty and was lacking in important details, so that the Attorney General's office was unable to prepare a bill. I am informed that the Attorney General's office consequently had raised a series of questions and issues which had to be addressed before they could even start preparing the bill. And amongst the issues that were raised were the following: the scope of the additional powers which had to be given to the Electoral Supervisory Commission, the transparency and disclosure rules that would apply to private funding, the applicability to political donations of the provisions of the Prevention of Corruption Act and the Financial Intelligence and Anti-Money Laundering Act that had to be clearly set out. Consultations also with the Rodrigues Regional Assembly on the proposed new expenditure thresholds in relation particularly to the Rodrigues Regional Assembly elections, and the absence of indication about the type of sanctions that would apply in case of any breach of the law. So all these issues, Mr. Speaker, sir, had not been addressed by the then Deputy Prime Minister in his report. So following the departure of the then Deputy Prime Minister from government, the newly constituted Ministerial Committee under the chair of Minister Mentor re-examined all those issues, and particularly those that were raised by the State Law Office, and therefore made appropriate recommendations that were taken on board in the preparation of the 2019 bill. Yep.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Referring to the second part of my question again, has the Honorable Prime Minister taken cognizance of statement made by the former Prime Minister on Friday, 10th of March on a private radio, whereby he confirmed that he received a donation from foreign sources, dollar notes, sealed packets? If yes, can the Honorable Prime Minister inform whether the former Prime Minister has complied with the law? Thank you.
Well, let me check. I have also requested a transcript of what was said at this interview. There were, of course, different comments that were made by the former Prime Minister with regard to this particular issue at a broadcast by a private radio. And we know that there were dollar notes in sealed packets that had been found in his coffer. Out of a total of $3.16 million, $1.7 million were in sealed plastic bags and were serially numbered. And although the latter confirmed that he had received those dollars from foreign sources, he has still not yet revealed those sources. And concerning the second part of the question, from the interview given by the former Prime Minister, it is, I must say, it is obvious when I read this transcript that those dollars were not declared because, let me remind the House again, according to Section 131A of the Customs Act, there is an obligation to declare any amount of funds entering or leaving Mauritius in excess of 500,000 rupees. So I note in that interview, he carefully replies by saying that he had no choice, in fact, because the law is there, he could not abide by the law, and he had no choice than not to abide by the law. This is really fantastic, amazing, Mr. Speaker, sir.
No, naturally.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can the Honorable Prime Minister inform the House if any political parties in recent years have obtained donations from companies operating a Ponzi scheme? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, the House and the nation know fully well the presence of a huge Ponzi scheme being operated by BAI was mentioned, in fact, for the very first time in this House by no one else than Honorable Paul Béranger when he addressed a PNQ in his capacity as the then leader of the opposition. On the 21st of November 2013, to the then Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the then leader of the opposition stated, and I quote, "The whole financial system was based on an insurance makeup built on a huge Ponzi scheme," unquote. However, we also know that after concluding an alliance with the Labour Party for the 2014 general elections, the MMM, led by Honorable Paul Béranger, accepted a cheque of 10 million rupees dated the 6th of November 2014 as donation from the same BI that he accused of running a huge Ponzi scheme.
Honorable Prime Minister, properly, can you repeat the amount that was given to that party? Honorable Prime Minister.
In this case, I said 10 million rupees through a check.
Honorable Bada?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I ask the Honorable Prime Minister, I think he will recollect that one of the fundamental contentions was about public funding of political parties. We were very near a consensus to have a majority in the House. And the question was whether we can have public funding together with private funding, as is the case in France and elsewhere, even if we could do it symbolically. So may I ask the Honorable Prime Minister whether the position of the MSM is still not to consider public funding, and I would also ask him whether this bill, which is to come, whether he can give us a time frame for its presentation in the House.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member will recall, of course, that the original draft had included a recommendation for funding, for public funding. And then, through consultations, he will recall that we decided at that time that we would not be moving for public funding because some members of the opposition had already taken a stand against public funding. I don't wish to the honourable member will recall there was a campaign that had started in public to say that, well, why is it that now government should start funding political parties? So we said, let us move step by step. And this is why we limited the proposal to financing by the private parties. Now, the honourable member will recall he was also part in the committee. He was also a member of the government, and he also took part in the debate, and he also defended that bill and voted, in fact, for the bill. And I'm happy that. But I hope you have not changed your mind today because you are in the opposition, right? So yes, we will, of course, as I have stated, Mr. Speaker, sir, now it is not the same government because we have other members also. Well, first of all, other partners in alliance, and then there are other members also in government. We will be holding those consultations, and then we will hold also consultations with members of the opposition, of course, and public at large also, so that we could, I hope, this time we can rally a consensus, because I think it is high time that we put our ego on the side and come up with a regulation, with a bill, so that we can regulate the financing of political parties.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Prime Minister state whether there was any mention of a political financing bill prior to 2014?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, from the records available, I'm informed as follows. In the Sachs report on electoral reform of 2002, the creation of a political activities public financing fund was proposed, and the Sachs Commission also came up with a draft bill on political funding. The 2004 Yangxing report was in fact on funding of political parties and included also a draft bill on political financing. In the 2011 Carcassonne report on electoral reform, there was no mention of political funding. The Sitanen report on electoral reform of January 2012 also did not make any mention of political funding. There was also no mention on political financing in the consultation paper on electoral reform of March 2014. And in the government program 2005-2010, there was no specific mention of political financing. The government program of 2012-2015 refers, in fact, barely to the financing of political parties. The government program of 2015-2019, of course, clearly mentions financing of political parties legislation, and government, in fact, did come up, as I say, with a political financing bill. And in the government program 2020-2024 does mention that a new bill on the financing of political parties will be introduced in the National Assembly.
For the sake of transparency, since we are talking about financing of political parties, is the Honorable Prime Minister prepared to table a list of all donors to the MSM, including Mr. Lishim, who said he had paid him 10 million rupees.
Mr.
And Mr. Lishim, he said that on radio, that he paid you 10 million rupees, and a list of all donors who enable you to construct Sunstruck.
Honorable member, don't mention the name of people.
Can you give a list of all donors which enable the MSM to build the Sun Trust, and a list of all donors who financed your campaign last year?
And what about all the donors which have provided financially substantial amount to the MMM? And we are proud. We have received donations from the private sector. We have a headquarters for the party. Your party, you have received donations. I can wonder whether who has pocketed this amount. You don't even have a headquarters. What are you talking about? And if you want a list, we all know apart from pocketing. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, sir? The leader of that party, il dénonce, laissez-moi peut-être parler en français pour qu'ils comprennent un peu mieux ce que j'ai dit avant. Il dénonce la BAI d'opérer un Ponzi scheme. Hein? Imaginez, et puis, tout d'un coup, lorsqu'il fait l'alliance avec le Parti travailliste, il accepte un chèque de 10 millions de roupies de ce Ponzi scheme. Comment vous pouvez qualifier cela? Et en plus, qui ne sait pas que Monsieur G, que vous connaissez, vous parlez des courses, parlez de l'argent que vous avez reçu des gens, des bookmakers. Hein? Pourquoi vous ne parlez pas de l'argent que vous avez reçu de la mafia de courses avec certains que je ne nommerai pas, et qui ne sait pas, une autre personnalité, Monsieur G, qui, je ne sais pas s'il est un membre de votre parti, en tout cas, il a collaboré à l'élaboration de votre programme gouvernemental. Ça, on le sait. Il a participé à plusieurs réunions, dont des réunions à Rivière-Noire. Il a participé, il a aidé à la campagne du MMM. Oui, mais je vous pose la question, allez demander à votre leader comment il a financé le MMM. Allez demander à votre leader, si votre leader n'est pas là aujourd'hui, regardez derrière vous, demandez à l'honorable Amiemia comment il a financé. L'honorable Amiemia pourrait vous dire.
Actually, Last question. Mr. Speaker. On the point of order. Yes, Mr. Speaker, my name has been mentioned by the Prime Minister. I, as Speaker, Mr. Speaker, what's going on in his house? Let me make my point. Let me make my point. Mr. Speaker, let me make... Both sides of the House, order. 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 Make your point. I can assure the House, including the Prime Minister, but whatever donation that the MMM has received, and I will ask the Honourable Prime Minister if he can bring a law with backdated effect 7 years or 10 years for all parties concerned, we, the MMM, shall deposit our bank statement in this House. Shall deposit our bank statement in this House. No, please. Order. This is not a point of order, but I allowed you to make your case. Okay? So, last question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In his reply, the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned that he is coming with a bill in due course, and now we have heard of donations, pocketing, and everything. So can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House if in the bill that he intends to bring in this House, if there will be any provisions to prevent political leaders, like we have seen in the past, taking the donation money and keeping it in their personal safe together with the tablets and pills?
Well, this is the very purpose why we want to, on our side, on this side of the House, we want to regulate the financing of political parties, because it has become public knowledge that we have a former Prime Minister who has been, in fact, not only, using political party funds for his own use also. He has also drawn from the official bank account of a political party to transfer some.
Standing orders do not allow any member to make accusations against members or people who are not within this assembly. On top of it, the Honourable Prime Minister knows very well that whatever he's saying are gratuitous allegations for matters that have never been proved before any court of law. Therefore, he is himself passing judgment against a party who is not present here. That would be in violation of fairness, which the Honourable Prime Minister, as a legal person, should know better than everyone else. So therefore, I appeal to you, sir, and the Honourable Prime Minister, since we are all wishing to be very fair in our approach, not to proceed along that line. I'm being very fair.
May I reply, Mr. Speaker, sir? Is it not public knowledge that a coffer was seized at the residence of the former Prime Minister, and that in that coffer or those coffers there had been loads of foreign currencies and Mauritian rupees, and it was assisted, if I can remind you, by your late father, who himself said,
It's not to give you explanation. Wait, don't give me orders. I know what I'm doing. I listen to your point of view. Please continue.
Who made a comment to say that mo pa capable faire miracle. Mo pa capable défendre les défendables. Mo pa capable faire miracle. So what I'm saying is already known to the public, Mr. Speaker, sir. There is nothing, I'm not making any accusation against anyone. Yeah, these are facts. These are facts.
I listened carefully to your point of order. The Prime Minister had the opportunity of giving his point, and I will rule on that at a later stage. Okay? So now time is over, and Honourable Mohammed.
Yeah, B124.
Before we move to PQ time, let me announce that PQ 117, B113 have been withdrawn. Now you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I will reply to PQ B124 and B174 together as they relate to the same subject matter. I am informed by the Waste Management Authority that the Montagne Jacot wastewater treatment plant located at Pointe de Sable was commissioned in 2007, mainly to cater for industrial effluent and municipal wastewater coming from the regions of Western Port Louis, Grande Rivière, Coromandel, Pointe de Sable, and La Tour-Kénic. The plant is designed to treat 48,000 meter cube of wastewater daily, with an average flow of 36,000 meter cube per day, and to use advanced primary and sludge treatment. Mr. Speaker, sir, the plant has been in operation for the last 15 years, and the electromechanical equipment have undergone major wear and tear and have exceeded service life in some cases, mainly due to being in contact with industrial wastewaters and environmental conditions. The current treatment process includes screening, followed by partial sludge removal in a contact tank. The sludge from the contact tank is then carted away. The effluent is discharged in the ocean at a distance of 835 meters and at a depth of 35 meters below sea level. I am informed that the effluent discharge meets ocean discharge standard. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am further informed by the Wastewater Management Authority that the following faults were reported in 2018, in respect of which remedial works have been / are being undertaken. First, the chemical building of the water line. Second, the sludge system of the sludge line. And third, the sludge dewatering system. The remaining components of the system are operational. For years 2020, 2021, and 2022, despite the non-operation of certain electromechanical equipment at the Montagne Jacot wastewater treatment plant, the preliminary treatment has proved its efficiency, as test results have demonstrated more than 99% percentile compliance to ocean discharge parameters. Mr. Speaker, sir, upon detection of the faults, the Wastewater Management Authority has enlisted the services of consultant Veolia Mauritius Limited in 2018, following a bidding exercise for the refurbishment and improvement of the operation and maintenance of Montagne Jacot wastewater treatment plant. The consultant submitted its report in 2019 and recommended the upgrading of equipment and infrastructure through a refurbishment plan in 4 phases. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that action has been initiated accordingly and works have been ongoing on several fronts following the submission of the refurbishment plan. I wish to outline the following main measures taken. A. Civil works in an amount of 6 million rupees and odor abatement works amounting to 4.5 million rupees have been successfully completed during financial year 2020-2021. B. Refurbishment works at inlet works and primary clarifiers are ongoing under a contract awarded in April 2022 for a sum of 20.48 million rupees. Works are expected to be completed by end of April 2023. C. Works with regard to sludge re-engineering have started in December 2022 and are expected to be completed in August 2023. D. A bidding exercise for the sludge dewatering units will be launched in May 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to reassure the House that necessary action is being taken by the Waste Water Management Authority to refurbish and upgrade Montagne Jacot wastewater treatment plant while maintaining all environmental norms. It is also worthy to highlight that for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022, the test results of effluent discharge affected by the accredited Wastewater Management Authority lab, which is certified to ISO standards, have been compliant with standards for ocean discharge. Furthermore, the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Blue Economy, Marine Resources, Fisheries and Shipping, in the last lagoonal monitoring report, have not reported any non-compliance in seawater quality at the sea outfall of the Montagne Jacot wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Speaker, sir, in addition to the above, I am tabling the test results from Quantilab, an accredited independent laboratory in respect of such parameters as biochemical oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand, as well as total suspended solids on a sample of treated effluent taken on 30th March 2023. It will be noted that all the parameters are well within acceptable limits and are in compliance with the standards of effluent discharge in the ocean regulation made under the Environment Protection Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I know the Honourable Minister went for a visit yesterday for about 1 hour, and he confirmed to the House that the plant is not operational efficiently since 2018. Can I ask him whether the electromechanical equipment that he referred to in his reply is in fact the clarifiers, without which, if they are not functional, no cakes, sludge cakes are produced, those same cakes that were disposed to Marchicos, and without this also, no chlorination of effluent water is done before discharge to the sea as part of the cleaning process. And as a result of this, the damage to the environment over the period of 5 years could be worse than a silent wakasho.
Not at all, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yes, I visited the site yesterday because I wanted to take stock of the situation before replying to the questions put to me by the two honourable members. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've been very transparent in my reply, and I've given reports that I have in my possession with regard to tests that have been carried out by the Wastewater Management Authority, by an independent lab, by the Ministry of Environment, and also by the Ministry of Blue Economy, Marine Resources, Fisheries and Shipping. And all the tests that have been carried out have confirmed that the results are in compliance with the standards for effluent discharge into the ocean, that is under the Environment Protection Act. I have the figures with me, and I'm very comfortable with the figures that I have in my possession, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I've tabled the results of tests carried out by an independent lab on the 30th of March, which confirms what I'm saying. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Dans un statement fait il y a 2 ans par le ministre des Utilités publiques, c'était le 30 mars 2021, suite à un point que j'avais soulevé à l'ajournement, le ministre avait indiqué qu'il s'agissait effectivement d'un déversement d'eau usée non traitée en mer en raison d'une situation d'urgence qui était due à des travaux à la station de pompage de Pointe-Sable, qui, je le rappelle, se situe à un endroit différent de la station de traitement de Montagne-Jacot. À la lumière de la visite en mer que je dois dire que l'honorable Osman Mohamed et moi-même avons effectuée il y a quelques jours, est-ce que le ministre souhaiterait revenir sur la déclaration qu'il a faite à la Chambre il y a 2 ans?
Non, pas du tout. Pourquoi? Je ne comprends pas. Pourquoi je dois retourner sur ce que j'avais dit à cette Chambre? What I said is correct. I don't need to amend anything, because don't mix issues. We are talking of 2 different facilities. One located at Pointe-Sable, which is no more discharging water in the ocean, and Montagne-Jacot, where we are still discharging water in the ocean.
Yes.
You should get information right before putting question in this House.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm quite puzzled by the fact that the main electromechanical facility there, which is the clarifier, is not working properly, it is faulty, and the minister is saying that the water is deemed fit to be thrown to the sea. I'm quite puzzled by this.
I'm not at all puzzled.
Can I ask
have
him?
Results with me. My results confirm what I'm saying. You can check the results. Then if you are puzzled, then I'll understand.
There is foul smell at sea, firstly. Can I ask the minister whether, being given that we are talking about 36,000 meter cube of water over a period of 5 years, containing untreated industrial effluent, containing raw sewer that has been thrown into the sea, whether divers can be sent down to examine the repercussion of this on the fauna and flora down there?
No, we don't need to send divers, Mr. Speaker, sir. We have, entities that can look after what you're saying. I said, I confirm here in this House that there have been regular checks by the bodies concerned, that is the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Blue Economy, by independent lab to test the quality of the water. And I've stated that the quality of the water meets effluent discharge under the Environment Protection Act. What do we need more?
Then we can, if you say you're happy with the results, Honourable Minister, we can leave the situation as it is. You don't need to do all the work that you've done.
This is not
I'm saying you're going to do.
No, we
This is a
cannot.
discussion. Okay.
No,
move to next question, Minister, please. Move to next question where we reach. I believe question B1 to 3 has been withdrawn. Now we move to question Honourable Fourth Member of Port-Louis Maritime and Port-Louis East, Honourable Juman.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I would reply to PQ B126 and PQ B193 at the same time. I'm seizing this opportunity to provide the House with a chronological order of events with regard to the setting up of the temporary committee of the Mauritius Football Association, MFA, and ultimately to its dissolution sometime later, following concerns raised by the Mauritius Olympic Committee, MOC. As far back as August 2021, my ministry informed the MFA that following grievances received at my ministry regarding the prevailing situation at the MFA with regard to good governance issues, my ministry decided to withhold all support to the MFA. Furthermore, upon request from my ministry, the MFA failed to submit a comprehensive action plan to develop football in Mauritius. Despite all the efforts made by my ministry and meetings held with the MFA, it was observed that the situation had not improved with respect to governance issues, while Section 5 of the Sports Act 2016 stipulates, inter alia, that every national sports federation shall uphold and operate on the principles of good governance, transparency, democracy, fairness, and non-discrimination. In addition, the Registrar of Associations, ROA, also requested the MFA to apply for the registration of the amendment of its rules, failing which action would be initiated against the MFA under Section 15(1)(c) of the ROA Act, which deals with the cancellation of the registration of associations. In a letter dated 28 December 2022, which the ROA addressed to the MFA and copied to my ministry, the ROA informed that the complete amended MFA rules could not be registered owing to shortcomings identified therein. Despite various working sessions that the ROA had with the MFA, the latter still failed to remedy these shortcomings. On Friday, 24 February 2023, I had a phone conversation personally with the president of the Mauritius Olympic Committee, MOC, to inform him of the above issues being encountered with the MFA and that there was a likelihood to favor the setting up of a temporary committee for the MFA, as a measure of last resort to avoid the deregistration of the MFA by the ROA as the National Federation for Football. On Monday, 27 February 2023, the MOC was invited to participate in a consultative meeting chaired by the Permanent Secretary of my ministry regarding the proposal for the setting up of a temporary committee. The MOC delegated its Assistant Secretary to attend the said meeting. In the light of the above and pursuant to Section 9 of the Sports Act, on 2nd March 2023, the Permanent Secretary of my ministry dissolved the Managing Committee of the MFA and set up a temporary committee of the MFA whose mandate was, inter alia, to amend the rules of the Mauritius Football Association with a view to aligning them with the provisions of the Sports Act 2016. As was the case for past temporary committees, for example, judo and boxing, set up by my ministry for an Olympic sport disciplines, it was decided to invite the MOC to delegate a representative to form part of the temporary committee. Another consultative meeting scheduled for Friday, 3rd March 2023 by my ministry with the MOC could not be held due to the unavailability of its president. Another meeting scheduled with the MOC for Monday, 6 March 2023 did not materialize. In a letter dated 5 March 2023, the MOC informed that following a meeting of its extraordinary executive committee, all its members agreed unanimously not to participate in that meeting scheduled for 6 March 2023. During the course of another consultative meeting held on Tuesday, 7 March 2023, the representatives of the MOC raised with officers of my ministry several points of concern relating namely to little a, the possibility of FIFA banning Mauritius in international football competitions, and in the eventuality of the MFA becoming compliant to local legislation, reaffiliation to the FIFA might still be problematic if MFA failed to respect the rules of its international federation, and little b, the eventuality of the International Olympic Committee applying international sanctions against Mauritius in all sports disciplines might be a reality. The representatives of the MOC thus made an appeal to my ministry to reconsider its position regarding the temporary committee and to find a solution acceptable to all the parties concerned. The representatives of the MOC reiterated their concerns during a meeting held under my chairmanship on 13 March 2023. In a letter dated 14 March 2023, the MOC expressly stated their concerns about the possible suspension of Mauritius from all Olympic sports disciplines and proposed that the Sports Act 2016 be reviewed. In this context, and taking into consideration that many of our athletes are actively preparing to participate in several forthcoming regional and international competitions, namely the Indian Ocean Islands Games, Francophonie Games, Youth Commonwealth Games, All Africa Games, Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games, my ministry could not afford to take the risk of an international suspension in all Olympic sports disciplines. On 17 March 2023, a decision was therefore taken to dissolve the temporary committee of the MFA and to reinstate the managing committee of the MFA. 2 weeks ago, my ministry has had preliminary consultations with the national sports federations dealing with team sports, where they made several proposals regarding amendments to be brought to the Sports Act 2016. Their proposals are now being examined and legal advice will be sought accordingly. I would like to inform the House that no correspondence was exchanged between my ministry and the FIFA in relation to the temporary committee. As for the correspondences exchanged with the MOC, the latter has been consulted and has no objection to same being tabled. Mr. Speaker, sir, since the football season 2022-2023 is nearing its completion by this week, the issue of allocating grants to the football clubs does not arise. Mr. Speaker, sir, on 31st March 2023, my ministry had already informed the MFA that my ministry has no objection to the MFA using stadiums falling under, falling under our purview for training by clubs and competitions to be organized by the MFA. Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I'm hereby tabling a series of correspondences exchanged between my ministry and the MOC in relation to the temporary committee of the MFA. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, you just said there was consultation with the MOC. And as per Sports Act Section 9C2, where appropriate, to appoint after consultation with the MOC, a temporary committee to manage the affairs of the Federation. Honourable Minister, can you inform the House whether a correspondence was sent to the MOC to invite them for consultation, and when the consultation was held, and the outcome?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I will repeat 2 items of my main reply, where I said on Friday, 24 February 2023, firstly, I had a conversation personally with the president of the Mauritius Olympic Committee to inform him that we are about to set up the temporary committee. On Monday, 27 February 2023, the MOC was invited to participate in a consultative meeting chaired by the permanent secretary of my ministry. The Mauritius Olympic Committee delegated its assistant secretary to attend the said meeting.
Monsieur le Président, ce n'est un secret pour personne que le niveau de notre football à Maurice est au plus bas, alors que d'autres pays de la région progressent à pas de géant. Puisque la MFA a failli dans sa tâche, l'honorable Toussaint, en tant que ministre des Sports, peut-il nous dire ce qu'il préconise afin que notre football retrouve son lustre d'antan?
Monsieur le Président, je suis entièrement d'accord avec l'honorable membre que c'est vrai que nous avons un souci au niveau de notre football, puisque ça fait assez longtemps que nous n'avons pas remporté de victoire dans différentes compétitions régionales ou africaines. Récemment, les jeunes ont fait montre un peu de leur qualité en ce qu'il s'agit de futsal, les filles aussi. Et nous avions demandé à la MFA, j'ai dit ça quelque part dans ma réponse, de venir de l'avant avec un plan pour revoir notre football et un plan sur le long terme. Hein. Je prends l'exemple de l'équipe de France qui avait remporté la Coupe du Monde en 1998. Ce n'est qu'en 2018 qu'ils ont re-remporté la Coupe du Monde. Cela veut dire cela leur a pris 20 ans après leur première victoire pour remporter encore une fois la Coupe du Monde. Donc nous avons demandé à la MFA un plan long terme, 10, 15, 20 ans par rapport à notre football. Ils sont venus de l'avant avec une proposition que les techniciens de mon ministère ont examinée et nous ne sommes toujours pas satisfaits avec ce qu'ils ont proposé. Certainement, nous allons continuer ce genre de rencontres et ce genre de dialogue jusqu'à ce que les deux parties, que ce soit la MFA, le ministère et aussi les clubs, allons dire un peu tous ceux concernés par le monde du football, nous soyons d'accord que ce plan qui viendra va nous emmener vers des sommets, vers des résultats un peu plus glorieux. Restez rassurés, Monsieur le Président, donc nous allons travailler et nous allons continuer à mettre la pression sur la MFA pour qu'ils reviennent avec quelque chose de plus réalisable.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Est-ce que le ministre peut nous confirmer la visite prochaine du président de la FIFA à Maurice? Merci.
Monsieur le Président, même si la question de l'honorable membre ne fait pas partie de la question principale, oui, il y a eu une correspondance, je ne vais pas dire oui qu'il vienne là, oui, il y a eu une correspondance de la part de la MFA nous informant que le président de la FIFA ferait une visite à Maurice. Cependant, de mémoire, hier, nous avons reçu une autre correspondance de la part de la MFA nous faisant part que, à Vienne, le président de la FIFA ne viendrait pas à Maurice.
Monsieur le Président, la possibilité que le Sports Act 2016 soit amendé afin d'offrir un statut spécial à la MFA par rapport à l'organisation de l'élection de son comité exécutif a été évoquée dans les médias et ailleurs. Le ministre, de ce fait, peut-il nous dire si son ministère compte aller dans cette direction et quel est désormais le statut officiel de la MFA auprès de son ministère?
Monsieur le Président, donc je répète ce qui a été dit dans ma réponse. Nous avons tenu des réunions avec les fédérations, toutes les fédérations, team sport comme on dit, donc basketball, handball, etc. Parce que nous voulions entendre de la part de ces autres fédérations si eux aussi il y a un souci par rapport à notre Sports Act. Et donc éventuellement, s'il y a amendement, ce serait pour tous ces team sports. Ce ne serait pas nécessairement un amendement spécialement pour le football. Nous continuons à travailler et comme je l'ai dit dans ma réponse, il y a eu des consultations qui ont été faites et il y a eu des propositions qui sont revenues vers nous au ministère et maintenant les techniciens sont en train de mettre un peu d'ordre dedans et éventuellement, donc ce sera aux personnes légales, c'est-à-dire le SLE, de venir nous guider quels sont les amendements que nous pouvons apporter.
Last question.
Honourable Minister, you mentioned the president of FIFA is not coming to Mauritius. In a correspondence sent to the MFA and to your ministry also, they said the FIFA president will not travel to Mauritius due to the late answer from your ministry. And Honourable Minister, in a letter addressed to the MFA by the FIFA on the 8th of March, despite many attempts the MFA and the FIFA made to seek dialogue with the ministry in order to find a constructive solution, which you mentioned earlier, that would be acceptable to all parties concerned. In this respect, we note from FIFA that our letter dated 20th of December 2022, addressed to the Minister and the PS, has so far remained unanswered. So, Minister, which is which? You want to engage dialogue with FIFA and MFA, and you're not responding positively to meet them and discuss. Which is which?
Monsieur le Président, donc je vais essayer de répondre à deux questions dans une question. Premièrement, je n'ai pas la lettre de la MFA avec moi là. Et certainement, je ne pense pas que nous avons voulu expressément répondre de façon tardive à la MFA. Nous aurions bien souhaité avoir le président de la FIFA ici à Maurice pour que, au moins, les clubs qui ont beaucoup de choses à en redire puissent le rencontrer et emmener leur doléance directement à celui qui dirige cette belle discipline. Si pour X raison le président ne vient pas, let's hope que very soon he will be able to make a visit to Mauritius so that all parties concerned would be able to voice out what they have to say about our local football. Je ne sais pas si je me trompe, veuillez m'excuser en avance, Monsieur le Président, mais je sens dans la voix de l'honorablement, j'entends comme un genre de plaidoyer envers la MFA. J'espère que je me trompe. Il y a eu beaucoup de correspondances qui ont été envoyées depuis belle lurette, Monsieur le Président. Je n'ai malheureusement pas toutes ces correspondances avec moi. Depuis belle lurette, depuis 2021, si je ne me trompe pas, moi-même personnellement, j'ai déjà eu une conversation téléphonique avec le responsable de la région Afrique pour expliquer les soucis qu'il y a actuellement dans notre football local et pour inviter les personnes concernées à venir. Il y avait récemment, donc l'année dernière, il me semble, il y avait deux responsables de la FIFA Afrique qui étaient à Maurice, qui ont rencontré le directeur des sports, qui a expliqué tous les problèmes que nous sommes en train d'avoir. Mais malheureusement, du côté de la FIFA, the answer was only one-sided. Alors, n'essayez pas de venir jeter la pierre sur moi, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
The House advised that PQB 1 Order. PQB 188, 185, 153, 141, 151, 184, 197, 158, 187, 202, B156, and B125 have been withdrawn. At this stage, honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.